mean, you can have a week for everything if you want, but I think this is a lot more about people pushing a social agenda and having the opportunity to then say anyone that refuses to not participate is a bigot, and we've got to roar at them, and they're setting a battleground where they can draw out some people who are bold and brave enough to sort of say, well, that doesn't align with our beliefs. Sorry about that. We're not going to participate. As those blokes did, I think, with a lot of decorum. They didn't make a big song and dance about it, just said, we can't participate in that. It conflicts with our value set.
It's been more than 12 months since the Pride jersey boycott by Manly Sea Eagles players in the NRL. The media generally points fingers and labels them bigots or homophobes. Yet a poll of NRL executives, some of whom may have publicly condemned the players, say they do not want Pride rounds in the league. And sure enough, this year, there is no Pride round in the NRL. Would you agree that this issue goes deeper than being about a jumper or a shirt and more about freedom of expression?
I think the issue is a good lightning rod and a good platform to have a debate on this thing, because there's, they preach tolerance at the woke brigade, but it doesn't seem to be afforded both ways. You're not allowed. We don't have, Good Christians Week in the NRL, and no one's allowed to pose things from the church or Christian values into the NRL. That would be abhorrent. But and we're not having the week where we recognise rural male suicide, and which is a much bigger source of anguish and concern, I would suggest, for the general Queensland population or Australian population. We don't have that. They force this stuff on us, and you can have a week for everything if you want, but I think this is a lot more about people pushing a social agenda and having the opportunity to then say anyone that refuses to not participate is a bigot, and we've got to roar at them, and they're setting a battleground where they can draw out some people who are bold and brave enough to sort of say, well, that doesn't align with our beliefs. Sorry about that. We're not going to participate. As those blokes did, I think, with a lot of decorum. They didn't make a big song and dance about it, just said, we can't participate in that. It conflicts with our value set. And let's not forget, NRL sold them out and said, well, let's apologise for their behaviour, as if to condemn their behaviour and say, well, we don't agree with it. But I think the majority of Australians say, look, this is just posturing. We don't need to have this stuff rammed down our throat. No one's out there looking up to bloody offend and rip into the gay community, but we don't need it, nor do we need it rammed down our throat. And when we're trying to watch a game of rugby league, and so there's a lot more about society, mate. And I think it's interesting that it rises up like this, and it's interesting to have these platforms to be able to talk about it. And this is the interesting part with the woke brigade. They'll throw out these little baits all the time, and for politicians like the KAP to come out and say, well, no, that's not on. And they just love it, because then they can just fire all the cannons at everyone and use you as an example to say no one else better ever disagree and have a different set of values to us, because we have the only set of values that is relevant and should exist in this society. So none of those Manly players or none of people get offended, annoyed watching this Pride stuff being rammed down their throat on TV. None of them are out there trying to in the streets every weekend saying let's have a non-gay Pride jersey week, or we're not trying to force our values on them. But tolerance have to work both ways, and it's interesting that they keep trying to set these battlegrounds for us, and I think it's great that we can use them as a platform to have the debate maturely and come back and say, well, we're not afraid to say our values, and that has no place in the NRL, and let us just watch our sport and not have an alternate set of values rammed down our throat.
So major sporting competitions in North America, such as the NHL and the MLB, have banned Pride jerseys because of the controversies such as with the Manly Sea Eagles. Robbie, what's the background to this decision by those competitions to ban Pride jerseys, and is it an indication that the tide is turning?
Well, I think it's very interesting, isn't it? I think that is that is big stuff. The Major Baseball League, and the National Hockey League, like that. I mean, they dwarf the NRL. They're you're talking of hundreds of millions, not the millions of audience for the NRL. This is talking in the hundreds of millions of people, and it's interesting that I don't think those leaders of those organisations, Major Baseball League and the National Hockey League, I don't think they're doing it because they're on a values crusade. They're taking the pulse of the public and they're saying, "Crikey." I could be wrong, but there's not too many cultural warriors out there on the side of conservatives, especially in those organisations. I think it's fascinating that would be driven by them doing internal polling and focus groups and stuff, saying, "Crikey, we've pulled the wrong rein here. Back out, back out." There was that Budweiser campaign that blew up in their face. It may have been the catalyst for this, and perhaps we're starting to see some of that silent majority saying, "Look, we entertained this for enough, and it seemed fairly innocent, but you're just ramming this stuff into our throat, into our schools, into our sports now, and we're going to start to stand up for ourselves." And I hope there's more of a trend of that in Australia because they're just trying to erode any sort of value set we've got left and trying to run it into the gutter.